stuff that is a part of our history and why we marginalize our own self, why we marginalize other people who, whether they're gay, lesbian, or straight, transgender, whatever the classification is. And so that is why educating, and this is why, you know, we're moving on this issue at Trinity, because we are the people who prepare people to be teachers, to be mental health counselors and school counselors, and you've got to be part of the movement. You've got to be the ones that go into these schools or these other agencies and say things have to change. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at these structures, and so so the structural the structural piece is very prominent in all of this.
Well, let me just say that I feel like nothing is hopeless. And one of the ways to begin looking at these communities is the amount of disrespect that these communities feel from the systems that we've been talking about. And the respect really begins with ourselves. And I know in our counseling profession, school counselors and clinical mental health counselors, that's one of the things that, you know, we develop in our relationships with others, is modeling respect. And what does that look like? Now, respect doesn't necessarily have to be taught. It is innate in us, but it has been blocked by the adverse childhood experiences that we have had in our lives. And children notice this. They know when they're disrespected. They know what that feels like. And then we go into mental health disorders like depression and suicide or anxiety, stress. So one of the things that we look at as counselors is strength-based models and wellness models. And what we want to do is to make sure that those that we're working with are part of not just the decision, but part of putting together their own strength-based models or wellness models. And one of the things that we can model for them is a community of respect. And that's really important. That's what I hear from children. They don't necessarily say the word respect, but they'll say someone doesn't like me, or someone was mean to me, or they hate me, or then I start hearing them say they hate themselves. And of course, we don't want to get to that point with them. So this is all preventable. It can start with us, and if we show them a community of respect and help them to advocate for themselves, because the children I work with, and teenagers too, actually want to have a voice in saying that I don't want to live this way. One of the things that I will say is that working with Head Start, I worked with them for about 12 years, and I don't know if you all are familiar with the program. It's preschoolers. And in the preschool, there's circle time. Circle time, this is where we had a community of respect, and children were able to talk about how they felt about their day. You know, did the bear come out last night or this morning and try to hurt them? How did they feel? And by them just expressing their feelings and we listening to them, the rest of the day was a lot better for them because they weren't afraid that they would be thinking about this bear and all alone. They knew that sharing this, that others may empathize with them, and we did. So starting with a community of respect, and little ones as young as 3 and 4 know this. I think that's important.
So my work is really at the systems level and really thinking about what is our public systems roles in addressing these adversities, both at the community level as well as individual. And one thing that I want everyone to remember when we talk about this work is that when you look at areas of concentrated poverty or you look at areas of racial or economic segregation, it's absolutely by design.
Yes.
So, you know, you spoke about the policy aspect of this, and I would say we need to go back further than 1960. So part of my work was doing actually a political analysis that goes back to 242 years. Because when you actually start a country and you codify inequality of individuals from the very beginning, and then you build policy after policy on top of that, of course you're going to see what we see today with as far as inequities are concerned and generational adversity that's passed on from one to the other. So the idea that we can treat our way out of this by treating individuals just merely by social emotional learning or being trauma informed, but then throwing them back into a broken system is not going to get us. We can't teach our way out of it. We can't treat our way out of it. We really have to accept the fact that we have to do some systems redesign. What does that take? It takes absolutely a movement, but it also takes political will. Yes. And so that's what we've been seeing is that what has been, surprisingly, even despite the administration that we currently, or regime, however you want to put it, that we are currently suffering, is that there is this pushback from the local level of we can't push people, we can't build a wall out of our way out of this, we can't, criminalize our way out of this, that we really do have to get to the root cause of a lot of this adversity. So that is building that political will through the advocacy, but then also really making the economic reality. And I think Dr. Burke-Harris kind of hints on the fact that the economic reality is that we can no longer carry this burden of adversity and expect ourselves to be politically or economically viable as a country. And so when you talk about that ACEs scores are in certain communities and marginalized, underserved communities and that concentration, I would say, yeah, absolutely. That was a brilliant design, and that design it produced exactly the outcomes that you see. If you want something different, we have to build a different machine. Right.
Absolutely, thank you. My mic is working at the very end. Okay. But there's I appreciate this, but I am a political science major, so I just want to add, there are some books that you should read about this because there's this debate now about affirmative action. There's a court case going on right now, but there's a book called When Affirmative Action Was White. And then there's this book, PBS has a series on race, The Power of Illusion. And after you get through the first one that talks about it's a social construct and it's not actually biological, it gets to the second one and it talks about how America created the white middle class, and ground zero for that is Levittown in Long Island, New York, and where you find out how they systematically gave all these supports to different communities, made them middle class, and now when they're saying, okay, affirmative action is now not appropriate for people who have been systematically disenfranchised. So I think, a lot of times we can't make a credible argument because we don't have an understanding of the history. We don't have an understanding of how wealth was built in this country. We don't understand that the average white family in D.C. has 83 times the wealth as the average black family in D.C. And so you need to understand that this is by construction, this is by design, it's not accidental. And if we're really going to address ACEs in a systematic way, we have to be armed with this understanding, because a lot of times what we'll walk away with the feeling that there's something wrong with us, that we're some way defective, there's some deficit, and we don't really understand that
can start with the principal and the school system kind of piece, and then the community that comes within that. One of the things that we tend to do in education is follow the shiny objects, right? We see something over here and we're like, oh, that's really cool, we should do that. And then we see something over here and we go over there. And we need to stop doing that. We absolutely need to stop doing that. And part of that comes from above, where our administration says to us, you need to do this program now, or you need to include social emotional, but it's for 15 minutes a day, so go enjoy that. It needs to be truly thought through. If you are a principal in a school, if you're in a community and you are involved in your school's PTA or your school's school board or any other aspect of the school, you need to step up and say, what is our big plan here? Not just what are we going to do tomorrow, what are we going to do next week, what are we going to do in a year? What are we really going to do to change our community and our school? And I'll tell you, I've worked in DC schools and I've worked across the country in other schools that had very different but very similar kinds of problems. And the point made about ESSA and No Child Left Behind and its focus on testing, there's so many pros and cons there, but I will tell you, we have lost sight of our students. We've lost sight of community. And I think standards and testing are important to a degree. But I was in a school where I watched children robbed of their education for 2 years straight, robbed of their education by teachers who were not qualified, by teachers who had no help in terms of behavior, by administrators who were trying to get rid of teachers who they felt were ineffective but could not then put in a long-term sub or another teacher because of the way the system was set up. And these children for 2 years were robbed, and we finally got a long-term sub in there who was great and knew her stuff and was fantastic. And we sat down in a meeting, and one of the people at the table said, well, so what are we going to do to get these kids ready for the DC CAS, the next large-scale assessment? And I am usually a very quiet, nice person, and I was furious, and I said, that is not the conversation we're going to have today. The conversation we're going to have today is, what are we going to do to get these kids the education and the experiences and the foundation that they lost over the last 2 years? And that needs to be our conversation. It can't be, here are the 15 different organizations I'm going to bring into my school, and if they work, great. And if they don't, who knows? It has to be, this is our plan, this is who's going to help us make this plan, this is who's going to implement this plan, and this is how we're going to check to make sure it's working, and we're going to continue on this path.
So, it'll be very quick, I promise you, very quick. Yes, so if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Education is the biggest civil rights issue that we're facing right now.
Yes.
And thank you, it's the biggest, and yes, research shows, period. Numbers don't lie. Everyone in this room can impact the change that needs to happen. And as a DTEC TAG member, I'm going to ask, and it's not a huge ask, but can you please text joint tag to 51555. It's on the information, it was on the site. Join tag, all one word, to 51555, and advocate with us. We all have a voice. Don't get on the menu. Be at the table. Thank you.
I would like to add to that. Of course, I have a long list that I won't go down. And I think it's interesting that the charter school board is across the way from us. But so, how many of you all are parents of young children? Okay, so you have a lot of power. And one of the things that I would request that you do is that you talk to your school administrators and you ask them about being trauma informed and trauma responsive. Most of them will say, oh yes, we are. But have them explain to you how they are. What does that look like? And also, those of you who have your children in charter schools. I would just say straight up, I'm not a charter school fan in terms of what has happened. But ask them that same question, and ask about, is there a compliancy model at this school? And that means, are your children being educated to be leaders?
Yeah.
Are they educated to be followers, where they're responding to clicks and to all kinds of stimuli as if they're getting them ready for prison? Because that is the pipeline. Our schools become pipelines. Some of our schools become pipelines to prisons. And you have to know the differences in terms of the types of schools that you choose for your students. And so you can ask any of us, go to your teacher ed people at whatever institution, higher education institution, and we'll tell you what's going on in some of these schools, because we put our teachers as interns in these schools, and we go out and visit these schools. We have our school counselors in these schools, and we know what is happening and what is not happening. You need to demand that. You need to demand more and not just listen to the easy answers. Oh yes, we're trauma informed and we're trauma responsive. There are very few schools that I know of in DC that actually are trauma informed and trauma responsive. But we're trying to put our students out there in these systems, in these schools especially, to encourage them to be more responsive. The other thing is there is an ACES task force that is stuck in committee with the city council. If you're a DC resident, call Vincent Gray and say, we want the task force out of committee. We need a task force to get at some of these issues, even though I have problems with the task force. But it's better than nothing at this point, that a group of people are looking at these issues, and we'll deal with the other aspects of the task force later, but we need to get it out of committee. Also, right.
You need to have your voice on the record because this Gray is responsible for that bill.
Right.
He already supported.
Yeah.
So that's, we have to talk to other people. You have to go and actually testify. You have to write a letter. You need to have that bookmark on your computer, on your phone, because we need people going to the city council to advocate for some of this legislation. And one last thing I'm going to mention is, if anybody's saying they are trauma informed as if it's a place you arrive at, because you never get trauma informed. You are on a journey to become, and it is a continuous process. So if they start using it like a stationary, and they say it like I've arrived, you already know they don't know what they're talking about. Okay.
The other thing is, if you're a parent and you are having problems with your children and you need help, ask for help. Start with, and one of the other aspects of this is with your pediatrician. One of the things you want to start doing is asking your pediatrician, are they trauma informed? You want to take that instrument that we just gave you and say, do you know anything about ACEs? Because we need our medical people to know about ACEs and to be trained. Everybody up here, this is new to us. We have had to teach ourselves. This was not in our programs, in none of our preparation programs. We are an example of how, and we want our students to see this. We don't know everything. We're constantly learning. This is all new to us. We have spent the last year in reading the research. As a parent, you need to do something similar to that and then demand more. And so that's, as parents, you have one of the biggest voices out there. Demand more of your systems.
So I'd like to add, just
I'm mindful of the time. I'm going to ask, after I give a final comment, but I'm going to ask, and I'm going to strictly adhere to it, that it has to be
last question, but I think it's building on this. So a simple thing that all of us can do, number one, is recognize the own traumas that we bring into to our daily lives. One of the things that I found to be really empowering for me was to give voice to the fact that these things had happened to me and it did not make me a bad person. It was about what other people had done. But I found it very important and very powerful in the medical community because every time that I was being diagnosed with someone said, "Oh, we never see this in someone your age." I was like, "Well, do you know my trauma history?" "Well, I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, well, you need to read the ACEs study," and helping them understand, helping other physicians understand how best to not only look at my diagnosis, but look at it in the context of what has happened to me, not just what's wrong with me. But the other part of this that I think is really important when you talk about one tangible thing that you can do. You don't have to be an advocate if that's not what you're comfortable with doing. Maybe you're not comfortable with going into the school and advocating, although I would say try to get comfortable. But you can be a supportive adult. And we know that the best thing, one of the best supports for children is that supportive adult. They need at least one supportive adult in their lives. So whether or not you have children, you can have a conversation with a child. You have absolutely no idea how you taking a moment of your time just to ask, what's going on with you? Hey, what's happening? And the things that will come out of that conversation, if that child has one safe person, one safe adult that they can go to, you have made a difference. So do not underestimate that there is the power of just being that one supportive adult, and that is one tangible thing that each one of us can do, whether it's tonight, whether it's tomorrow, this month, but you can do it.
Thank you. Any final comments? Because we also, before we close today, we want Dr. Opria to tell us a little bit about the questionnaire. We want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. And so we want her to describe that. So any final comments quickly from the panel? And then I want to take a couple of questions from the audience, and we'll close out.
We're going to give the time to you. Lou, take the time.
She's just passing this out right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Any final comments? Okay.
Dr. Opria will be giving her. Yeah.
With the comment.
She's talking about the epigenetic changes that occur with the exposure to trauma and stress from generation to generation. And so, in a really non-technical way of explaining it, it's like a light switch. So we are all born with a certain DNA blueprint. And so certain things that you're exposed to in your lifetime can either turn it on or turn it off. And so that's what she's talking about, is that there are certain triggers that can be turned on based upon your life experience. So if you have, when you see, like in African Americans, we have a higher level of hypertension and diabetes and things of that nature. It has to do with, because those are turned off, those are also associated with the HPA axis that she was talking about, and then that adrenal axis. So we have a higher exposure to stressors that, with a blueprint that already puts you at a higher disposition for those types of things. That's what she's talking about.
And last question, of the 17,000 persons that went through the study, did they offer treatment for any of these adults?
What? I'm sorry, what?
The original ACE study, was treatment granted to or given to any of the participants?
There isn't like an ACEs treatment.
Right.
There's more of like, if you have a person that's been exposed to sexual abuse, then perhaps there's some counseling that you can go down. But I'm not sure if there was treatment that was given to them, because they were there for the obesity clinic. It was completely different.
One last question, please.
Good evening. Thank you for being a part of the panel. I'm an aspiring child and adolescent psychiatrist, and one of the things that we've been taught is that mental health is taking more of an integrated approach with social workers, teachers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and et cetera. What gaps do you see and what disconnects do you see, whether it's miscommunication or whatever, that may be beneficial for up-and-coming medical professionals or what have you, that need to be at the table when having these conversations? And I have one comment as far as, I know that nowadays, like, we're being taught that everybody has to be interdisciplinary. So it's not enough just to be a teacher and to focus in that realm, but to also be at the table when policy is coming about as well as medical issues is coming about, so everybody's well versed and that you can hold each other accountable.
I think an interdisciplinary approach has to be taken, and that is the model that Dr. Harris is talking about in terms of an integrative wellness center where everybody, you can call it wraparound services, that everybody's in the same place. So when a pediatrician does an assessment and that child then needs to see a social worker or a mental health person, they're all in the same place because it's all about that whole person. And so that is one of, and that's why this has to be a public health issue and addressed from a public health issue in order to bring everyone together that needs to be together. There is prevention, and we know what kinds of things work or can work, and so, but a part of that has to be that people from all the areas that you just explained have to come together, that in our schools, I like the wraparound model, that our schools are community centers, and that, that everyone is being educated about something, and that those services are being provided.
I also just want to add, although you're being told it's innovative, it's been like that for quite a while, but what I have seen happen is that often, although we're all at the table, you're operating in a silo. What helps is when the conversation is about little Johnny, everyone is focused solely on little Johnny, not what worked with Billy or Mary or Raheem, but what works for Johnny. And that conversation has to be centered on only him. Don't tell me what book or program you're going to pull off the shelf. What's the strategy, skills? What are we doing for Johnny? That individual approach. Society today likes a microwave response, and it doesn't work for education.
If I can just add one quick thing, you're absolutely right about the silos, and I've worked a great deal in Head Start and early childhood settings, and there's also territory. There's turf. And I have worked for the past 7 or 8 years to try to build a bridge between early childhood education and early childhood mental health. And the vibe you often get is, stay on your own lane. And we need to realize that there's a big gray area there.
This is our lane.
So that's another piece of it.
And that really speaks to the systems approach, because that is absolutely by design. When we talk about, particularly when you talk about these interdisciplinary teams, you have early childhood education that has a funding stream going this way.
Right.
You may have education that has a funding stream going there. And then you have providers that are leveraging a lot of times Medicaid.
Right.
So these are all different revenue streams. The money doesn't mingle. And the other part of that that's really important is that neither do our data streams mingle.
Yes.
And so, those are two of the bigger policy barriers that we do have to address. So as a aspiring professional, you might want to take some business classes and some policy classes, because you're going to find that when you're going to find yourself in a lot of conversation around legal contracts and negotiating some of these partnerships to share information, as well as how you share resources across silos. And that's the only way that we're going to break down these barriers of actually doing practice share across the necessary disciplines that have to be at the table to do this work.
And I want to end this by saying thank you to all of our members. Thank you for sharing your expertise. I also want to end this with saying I invite all of you to come to Bright Beginnings, because we do this work and we don't work in silos. We have mental health services, therapeutic services, we have workforce development services, adult education, birth to 5 services, health and wellness, trauma specialists, child psychologists. We're trying to do this work because we know that supporting families who are, and children who are experiencing homelessness, this is the only way you can do that. So please, look at us, look for us, come visit, and give us your feedback. We are always willing to hear how we can do that work better. I want to end it with Dr. Opria going through the ACE survey and talking you through that so you'll know how to.
Hi. So I believe all of you have the Adverse Childhood Experiences ACEs questionnaire. It's one page, and there are 10 items. This is an assessment, and so what the assessment tells you is not what's wrong with you, is what happened to you. And what's important with this particular questionnaire is that once you take it and find out, what are the items in here that you have said yes to, then what you can do is take this to, your medical doctor, to a mental health professional, to find out what ways can I change these adverse childhood experiences that I had that have affected my life now. And so what's important with this questionnaire is to look at this, just know that you may have some emotions around some of the items in here. And it isn't that you did anything wrong, it's to find out how strong you were to go through what your experiences were. And just make sure that the resources that we gave to you, that other handout, there are mental health professionals in there. There's other resources that might be helpful not only for you, but family members and those in your community. So if you do have any questions about this, I'll be glad to answer them, but I wanted to simplify this for you. It's just to see where you are and where you can go to also empower yourself and know how to change your life for the better.
Any questions about the survey before we close? Again, thank you. We have an evaluation. Please fill out the evaluation, turn it in at the back, at the table outside. You can just leave it because that feedback is vitally important as we continue to put on programming throughout the year. Thank you very much for coming and supporting us. This is the opportunity.